Welcome to the deep dive. Today we're plunging into some really fascinating ancient sources. We've got these specific excerpts from a commentary on the Dhammapada.
That's right. And we're tackling a question that honestly feels just as relevant now as it must have back then.
Totally. What actually makes someone, spiritually significant? What are the real signs of progress, according to these teachings?
Yeah, stripping away the superficial stuff. The goal is to find out what core qualities really matter.
And it's not what you might expect, is it? The commentary redefines this term Brahman, historically tied to birth, to caste.
Exactly. These texts basically say, hold on, it's got nothing to do with your family or, how you look or your social standing.
It's all about what's happening inside, inner transformation. And the sources use these really surprising examples to make the point.
Right. Like a guy who used to be a notorious bandit and another who was an actor. It's pretty countercultural stuff.
So let's dig in. How did the Buddha tackle this head on? We start with that story of the Jolly Brahmin, the ascetic with the matted hair.
He comes from a Brahmin family,
Yeah.
born and bred, you could say. And the text mentions he was quite proud of that lineage.
Yeah, it says, well born from both mother and father, born in a Brahmin family. He is the definition of status by birthright.
So naturally, he goes to the Buddha and asks, essentially, hey, you call your followers Brahmin, does that mean me too? Because, look at my background.
Makes sense from his point of view, but the Buddha's answer, so direct.
Incredibly direct. The source says he just says no, flat out. Not because of your matted hair, not because of your lineage, not because of your birth. None of that makes you a Brahmin.
Wow. Na jahi, na gatna, na jahi.
Exactly. And then comes the core verse, the one this whole commentary section seems built around. Not by matted hair, not by lineage, not by birth is one of Brahma.
In whom there is truth and righteousness, Dhamma, he is pure, he is a Brahmana. Yami sakanya dhamoka sushiso ka Brahmana.
Right. That's the key phrase. Truth and Dhamma.
So if it's not the external stuff, what is this truth and Dhamma? Does the commentary break that down?
It does, and it's very specific. It's not just like being a good person vaguely.
Yeah.
It says it means having penetrated the Four Noble Truths.
Okay, suffering, cause, cessation, path, the core teachings.
Really penetrated them, it says, with 16 aspects. So a really deep, thorough understanding and possessing the 9 kinds of supramundane Dhamma.
16 aspects, 9 times. So we're talking about serious, realized insight here, not just intellectual knowledge.
Precisely. It's about grasping reality itself in depth and embodying those higher spiritual states.
Just think about that for a second. In a society totally structured around birth, this teaching just turns it all upside down. It says the only thing that counts spiritually is this deep inner realization.
It's revolutionary, really.
So, okay, that's the foundation, penetrating truth. What else makes up this picture? What's next?
Well, that brings us to the second story, adds another layer. This one's set in Vivana, and it involves someone who used to be an actor or a dancer.
An actor. Okay, so again, probably not someone from the traditional priestly class. What quality does he highlight?
The commentary zooms in on something really interesting. This person has abandoned both pleasure and displeasure. Ratinika aratinika pahaya hito.
Both. Pleasure and displeasure. That feels odd. Usually we think about getting rid of the bad stuff, the aversion. Why letting go of pleasure too?
Good question. The source clarifies. Pleasure here, Rati, is specifically about attachment to sense pleasures. Nice sights, sounds, tastes, the usual stuff we chase.
Okay, chasing the pleasant. Got it.
And displeasure, Arati, isn't just general unhappiness. It means overcoming that restlessness or weariness you might feel towards, say, the discipline of forest dwelling or solitude, the aversion to what helps you practice deeply.
So it's about being free from both clinging and pushing away, transcending that whole cycle.
Exactly. So the verse for this story talks about someone who has abandoned pleasure and displeasure. Hitva ratinika, aratinika.
And does that verse add more qualities? You said this is where it gets really interesting.
It does. It describes this person as Kul Siddhibuta, which the commentary says means Nibbutta.
Nibbutta, right. That state of ultimate peace, the extinguishing of the fires.
That's right. And they're without defilements, nirupadi, meaning free from inner taints, nirupakiles, pure inside.
Oh, okay.
Cooled, pure.
Then, overcoming all worlds, sabalokavipu. The source explains this as overcoming the world of the aggregates.
The aggregates.
Yeah.
Body, feelings, perceptions, mental formations, consciousness, so like transcending our usual conditioned self.
Essentially, yes. Going beyond the limits of that conditioned existence. And finally, heroic, vira. defined as having energy, effort. Viryavante.
So it's not passive. There's effort involved, definitely. Active spiritual effort. And the punchline. The Buddha says this person, the former actor who's found this inner balance, free from craving and aversion, full of energy, he's a Brahmin.
Wow. Okay, so it's truth penetration and this profound inner peace, this freedom from the push-pull, plus the energy to keep going. That really broadens things.
It absolutely does, which leads us perfectly into the third story.
Yeah.
This one's in Jetavana. And it involves, well, a very famous figure, Aṅgulimāla.
Aṅgulimāla, right, the highwayman. Well, the mass murderer turned monk. I'm talking about an unlikely example.
Couldn't be more unlikely based on conventional views. So the setup is some monks see him near a dangerous elephant, like a really intimidating elephant.
Okay.
And they ask him, maybe testing him, aren't you afraid?
And what does he say? Given his past, maybe they expected bravado, but...
He just says simply, no, I'm not afraid. Nabayami.
But the monks didn't buy it.
Apparently not. They went to the Buddha and were like, Aṅgulimāla is making stuff up. He's claiming attainments he doesn't have. They thought not being afraid in that situation had to be a lie.
Oh, they misunderstood.
Totally. But the Buddha defends him. He says basically, my son Aṅgulimāla isn't afraid. Monks like him who've destroyed the defilements. They're like chief bulls. They are fearless. Their inner state makes them fearless.
The chief bulls among those whose outflows are destroyed.
Okay. And this prompts another amazing verse from the Brahman chapter, pulling even more qualities together.
Let's hear it.
That one who is like a bull, a zapat, excellent pavra, heroic balai, a great seeker, messiah, victorious vijitavanya, unshaken anajay, washed clean, mantakot, awakened, the buzohan. That one I call a Brahman.
Isavha pavaravinaid. That's a lot. How does the commentary unpack those? Like a bull, Isavha? Is that just strength?
It links it directly to fearlessness. It's that inner stability, not aggression.
Got it. An excellent pavar.
That means supreme. Uttamatya, like the pinnacle of spiritual achievement.
Okay, heroic. We saw that before. Energy and effort, right.
Yep. Virya sampatya. Still emphasizing that active quality. And great seeker. Mahesi.
What's that about?
It means seeking great qualities, specifically mentioning things like the aggregates of virtue. Salakandadine. So actively cultivating goodness.
So it includes ethics, virtue, seeking
Yeah.
those out. Okay. And victorious. Vijitavino.
This one's powerful. The source says it means having conquered the three maras.
The three maras,
Mhm.
the inner obstacles, defilements, the aggregates themselves, and death.
Exactly. So victory here means profound mastery over everything that binds us to suffering.
Wow. Okay, what else? Unshaken, Anuja.
Calm, free from the trembling of craving. Just steady.
Nice. And washed clean, Nahataka. Like baptized.
More like internally cleansed, washed clean of defilements, it says. Not dakilisataya. Inner purity, again, not external ritual.
Okay. And last one, awakened Buddha.
That brings us full circle. It means awakened to the four truths. Katusaka Buddhataya, back to that core understanding from the first story.
So Aṅgulimāla's story adds layers of fearlessness born of inner peace, sustained effort, actively seeking virtue, conquering those deep inner obstacles, being unshaken, pure, and fully awakened.
You got it. It builds this incredibly rich picture.
So let's pull it all together. What's the big takeaway when you look at these three stories side by side?
The message from this Dhammapada commentary is just crystal clear, and like you said, it totally flips conventional thinking. The label Brahmana, used spiritually, has absolutely nothing to do with who your parents were, what ceremonies you've done, or how you appear.
Nothing external?
Zero. It is defined entirely by your inner state, your inner attainment.
So the qualities that really count based on these texts are things like deeply seeing the truth, like the Four Noble Truths, having that inner purity, getting beyond being jerked around by pleasure and pain.
Yeah, finding that deep, cool peace, being free from those inner taints, going beyond the limits of just being, your body and mind in the usual sense.
Right, overcoming the aggregates and having that heroic energy, that constant effort, being truly fearless inside.
Reaching that supreme inner quality, actively looking for and cultivating virtue, conquering the maras, those inner demons, being totally steady and unshaken.
Washed clean inside and fully awake. That's quite the list.
It really is. And it wasn't just theory. The commentary notes that after hearing these explanations from the Buddha, in all three cases, many people listening actually reach enlightenment stages right then and there.
So tapafaladini papuchusu, they attain stream entry and other fruits. So understanding this true definition clearly has power.
Huge power.
So for you, listening, wanting to get a real handle on this, these stories aren't just abstract. They give you these concrete pictures. The proud ascetic, the balanced actor, the fearless former bandit showing what these qualities look like. It makes this profound redefinition much easier to grasp.
It's really an invitation, isn't it? To shift how we look at spiritual development, maybe even success in general, away from the outside stuff.
And towards what's happening within. Interstate interaction.
Completely.
Which leaves us with a pretty big question to chew on, I think. If the highest spiritual ideal, this Brahma, is defined purely by inner truth, by purity, by that fearless peace, by overcoming inner obstacles, what does that challenge about how we usually define value? In ourselves and in other people. What are we really looking for?